Oh yeah, we can watch this. The cinematic mod. Since we talked about how mods are essentially the future, let's talk about something that subsequently divides the community, or subsequently kicked out a guy for creating some genuine bullshit.
This video is brought to you by War Thunder.
Good evening. I've always thought that Half-Life 2 is a game that's held up pretty well considering its age. Sure, it's a bit crusty.
Wait, Richter? I thought it was like Lucia. Wait, that one Lucia did. I think Lucia made a video about it, which is better, I think.
This video will be a history, analysis, summary and review of what is probably the best Half-Life mod.
Let me just try cinematic. Type it out like that. There we go. That's a better coverage than the one.
If you aren't aware of what this image entails, then it might just look like a few polygons. But oh boy, you couldn't be more wrong. Today I'll be telling you about Fake Factory's Cinematic Mod 2013. Going by the description of this mod, which states, imagine a Hollywood producer got his hands on the game. The result would be similar to what Cinematic Mod is. A graphics blockbuster, redesigned to the typical game-to-movie adaptation with an orchestral soundtrack and beautiful people everywhere. This mod attempted to fully remaster Half-Life 2 and its episodes by upgrading the graphics, maps, sounds and basically everything up to a more modern standard, while at the same time giving the games a bit of a gritty look, which does sound like a good idea and concept. After all, like Mesa, Half-Life 1's remaster, which was also created by fans, was a huge success. So let's get to installing it. Which is where the problems start. You have two ways of installing it. One is by using a torrent, which I have no idea about, which is why I went the traditional way of using ModDB. Here you will have to download 9 parts of the mod, that are each about 2.7 gigabytes. This took multiple hours to download. After fully installing it, the game will be 55 gigabytes, with another 34 gigabytes being the installer, which you can of course delete afterwards though. After you have gone through this process, which depending on your internet connection and your distance from the download servers of ModDB might take an entire day, you have to set up the game using the configurator. To be fair, you don't have to, you can just go and play it, but some important things can be modified here. You can tweak a lot of settings of this mod, regarding mostly graphical things, but also stuff like if you want the weapons switch out for new ones, if you want to apply the cinematic mod's custom difficulty settings like one-hit headshots, or toggle big map changes. Some of these settings don't work though, like the head bobbing, which cannot be disabled entirely sadly. I have not changed any settings from how it was after downloading for now, except for some technical stuff. There's also the character pimper. Here you are able to modify the character modded to your likings. By default, all the characters will be the standard settings. Here you might start to notice some weird decisions. Now, obviously this is optional. For most characters you can just toggle between the standard version and the cinematic mod version. Except for the women. Mossman has a total of 3 choices and Alex has a total of 55 choices. With Alex you are able to choose a model for each chapter individually. A lot of Alex's models are questionable, but we'll get to that. Now, sometimes it looks like styles are clashing
we'll talk about
but in general this does look like a more modern version of Half-Life 2. Then again, Half-Life 2 definitely had its charm in its graphics and holds up pretty well even these days. And while this
I wouldn't exactly say it holds up pretty well, I will say it does have charm. It's like the equivalent of playing like the old Nintendo 64 style games. It's definitely dated by current standards, but again, the whole point is the atmosphere, the gameplay, the overall like engagement with said game. If it works and it manages to keep you like, you know, in one whole sitting to play it, why the fuck should it matter how it looks? It definitely looks good still. Not perfect, but still good.
Doesn't look like the same quality as Black Mesa. This is to be expected for a remake made by a singular person. The character models look odd, but also fit pretty well in the cinematic mod world. It's definitely something to get used to, and you can of course still disable them if you don't like them. Also must mention that the combine replacements actually look really good and look kinda similar to the combine units in Half-Life Alyx.
That is true.
Do a speed tour through all the chapters and name what was changed and some other noteworthy things. The beginning chapters show a very different City 17. It's now a bit of a mix of European style cities as we know them from Half-Life 2 and just modern city. I think this looks really cool actually. It all looks a bit more Americanized in a way. while still making clear references that it's taking place somewhere in Eastern Europe. Now obviously, while I'm glad Half-Life 2 Retail didn't look like this, I can appreciate the looks of this as well. Also, before I move on to the Canal chapters, this crate was moved for some reason. What a weird decision. The Canal chapters actually profit greatly from the graphical improvements, I think. It's sometimes a bit too cluttered though. In these maps you'll start to notice some odd graffitis from time to time. Now, while the explicit models of Alex are indeed toggleable, these graffitis that are pretty obscene are not. There is a mod made by somebody else that actually removes these graffitis. I will link it in the description in case you want to play this game and have them removed. The water hazard chapters are changed quite drastically. They've got a lot more of a cola kind of boreal tone. Also they have highways over them quite a few times, which looks like someone was playing City Skylines here. The entire chapter seems like it's not really situated in the outskirts anymore, as there are a ton of buildings added here. The particles in this mod are really extreme, but I think that's fun and cool. Also you might notice that the elbow controls are incredibly sluggish, which is something you might perhaps have noticed throughout the entire game. Well, do I have news for you. The entire game is playing in slow motion. Post timescale is a command used to change the speed of time.
Yeah, this is something I had no idea they made. Just why exactly slow down the speed of the game? Let me just play it so you can hear it out entirely.
0 being fully stopped and 2 being double speed. This game sets it to 0.85. It's hard to notice since it's only 15% slower. However, I think especially in the airboat section this is noticeable.
Yeah, this is like super weird. Why not play it at like normal speeds? Why slightly slower it down? He'll also point out another issue with this so-called slowing down the time for the game. I think you can still toggle it though. But again, why is this like the default?
The best way to really notice it is when characters talk, as sounds are not slowed down, but the animations are. In Black Mesa East, which we'll also just skip to now, the hand movements are a lot slower than how the characters talk. They have a lot longer breaks in between sentences because they're waiting for the animation to finish. It's pretty offbeat due to the slow motion.
Things would go so much faster if we had more people with your training. We're closing in on a
This mod sometimes adds extra rooms, which can be nice. It's kinda just filler, but it's a cool way to add something new for the people replaying Half-Life 2 with this mod. Eli's lab actually has new rooms that are meant to be Alex's personal living space, which is fine, except that you can actually find this in here. It's also just placed right here, just doesn't really seem like something that needed to be there.
We'll get to it.
Just the same. The coast chapter can actually be incredibly different depending on your settings. Now at first, this setting didn't work for me, for whatever reason. But basically there's a setting that fixes a time skip that happens after Ravenholm. As we know, the sun sets while we're at Eli's lab, and it's night once we enter Ravenholm. After Ravenholm though, it's suddenly daytime again, and it goes dark once we reach Nova Prospect. With this new setting, it will make it so that the coast maps actually take place during the night, and that the sun is starting to rise in Nova Prospect. Which, by the way,
which is cool.
Nova Prospect was 10 out of 10. Throughout this mod you will hear a ton of new soundtracks, which I believe are all just stolen Hans Zimmer soundtracks. They do sound cool in this game, but I'm not sure if they just so happen to fit into Half-Life, or if Hans Zimmer just makes absolute bangers that go with everything. The coast chapters themselves are a lot more industrial. They're also way more foresty. It's similar to the driving chapters of episode 2. The crossbow location was moved, which I think isn't a good choice. It's a lot more missable this way, since you now get it after clearing the roadblock. The roadblock in Half-Life 2 was used so that the player gets out of their car and picks up the crossbow, which made a lot of sense gameplay-wise. This is now just gone though. It's also raining once we get to the final levels of sand traps, which is nice. Nova Prospect is basically unchanged as well. Now when I say this, of course there were a lot of changes. They simply aren't that noteworthy. The game keeps its standard throughout these chapters. City 17 looks pretty decent throughout. Also the rebels kinda look like the US Army. There's also a small detail that I really appreciate. The mod sometimes features these wanted posters for Alex, the image of which actually changes depending on what Alex model you picked for the intro. What a nice addition. The Citadel levels are basically the same, except for a few texture replacement and a bit of red added to the color scheme of it.
That red does not look good. I know it's supposed to be like, oh, evil lair and everything, but still. Ugh. Blue and red, not good. Never good.
Episode 1 is not really worth mentioning, it's exactly what you would expect. The Citadel explosion at the end remains unchanged, not using the cut Citadel explosion sadly. Episode 2 mostly looks the same as well, though the forests are made a lot more dense. I really disliked how many trees there were at the start of Freeman Pontifex. You're supposed to be able to take a look at the huge Combine army that is heading towards
that is one huge ass forest.
White Forest, not just look at trees. Also the rock paper shotgun levels kinda look like DayZ or basically any post-apocalyptic game set in Eastern Europe. I thought these looked kinda good. A quick look at the reworked weapons, most of them are the same basically, except for a bit of a higher poly rework. The SMG, pistol and AR2 are replaced. They look more realistic kinda. The pistol has a weird laser pointer that doesn't always line up, that can't be disabled, which I
Okay, I get for the SMG and the pistol to have these types of changes, but why the fuck do you need to change the AR2 of all things? That does not make sense. The AR2 is an alien gun from Half-Life. That's like having the hive hand and changing it to something like a Negev. Like, huh?
found to be a weird choice kinda. Also, you have a bind for using iron sights and night vision, which can be fun to use, I guess. I never really did though in my playthrough. I personally enjoyed using these new weapons, but a lot of people didn't. This leads into the scandals of this mod basically. When this mod released, there was a ton of backlash. For one, the weapons were criticized. I for one don't mind them as much, and it is of course very easy to disable them. Then there is of course the artistic direction this mod went in, sometimes kinda clashing in terms of style. People just didn't think this game looks that great, which I can get behind. While I personally enjoyed my experience in terms of how the levels looked, I get that it can get a little eyesore to look at sometimes. But at the end of the day, that is for people to decide for themselves. There's no denying the amount of effort that went into this though. The other criticism is the obscene graffitis and posters, the hypersexualization of the game. These can actually not be toggled. The other, and probably main criticism, is the way the different Alex models looked, which I can get behind as well of course. It's weird to include literal porn models just like that. There are also things like the jiggle physics on Mossman and sometimes Alex, which are set to unrealistic and, most importantly, totally unneeded values. There are some better models that are just simply HD Alex reskins that kinda look alright. To get back to the image I've shown in the intro, at one point one of the Alex models included a fully modeled cervix that came with its own particle attachment point for dripping particle effects. To be fair, these have since been removed. Some models do still include visible, fully textured private parts though. You can of course disable them, but I believe it to be a weird decision to include it in a remaster of a game like Half-Life in the first place. Just make it a completely separate add-on, I'd say. So if you ever see these couple of polygons or someone mentioning fully modeled in the Half-Life community, that is what they're referring to. When this mod released, the Half-Life community got together to actively tear this mod down.
I will say, like, I get some people, like, want to fulfill certain gooning fantasies, but I don't know. On the one hand, it is kind of bizarre. Like, keep that shit to Horn Pub, to be more specific. And make sure you don't get that, like, by default. Same thing with the graffiti, actually. It's just weird. It's, like, bizarre. It's like those girls that, like, have OnlyFans and think they're, like, self-sustained adults. They're not. They fucking suck dick and get money from it. I wouldn't exactly call that a fully functioning adult. Stupid. But at the exact same time, I don't think it's like I don't know, with the setting of Half-Life being, of course, the whole alien invasion, people start being treated like pets, being neutered and stuff like that. Having that type of theme kind of push through is kind of making sense. It's like the humanity constantly kicking and screaming, basically being brought to like such a low number that essentially it affects the breeding process and everything else. But I don't know. It's weird, but for the universe and setting of Half-Life, kinda justified. Kinda being the key word. And really, really kinda justified. It's stupid though. It should be a separate mod. I agree with like Lucia on this. It should be a separate mod, not something directly included with the game.
And anybody stepping in to defend it in a we did it Reddit kind of moment. Even today, it's still a very much frowned upon mod. The creator didn't take lightly to the criticism and was and is very much disliked by the community. To add onto it, he seemingly wasn't that good at taking criticism. He later added that he simply created this remaster for himself and wanted to see what he could do on his own, and thought the community was going way too crazy about toggleable models, which kinda is a valid point. The mod deserves criticism where criticism is due, and of course not everything can be defended with, you can just turn it off. Half-Life 2 Overcharged, a remaster mod that released about a year ago, includes about 300 different and very unorganized settings. Most people didn't enjoy their time with this mod. mod. And often you hear the response, you can just change that in the settings. I think this argument can only go so far. Half-Life 2 MOD is a highly praised mod that also reworks a lot of Half-Life 2's looks, weapons and AI. That one includes quite a bunch of settings as well, though more neatly organized and also in-game. I think the cinematic mod walks along the settings line nicely as well. The configurator gives you about 20 different settings that are more or less neatly organized. And then you also get the character pimper. You do have to start a completely different program to tweak the settings though, but I think that's fine overall. This is by the way how the game looks when I cranked everything up to maximum. You would need to play around with these settings until you find something that suits you. So yeah, to summarize, I'm gonna go ahead and say that a ton of the criticism this mod got was undeserved. Now, hold on, hear me out. Get your mouse away from the dislike button. Just wait a quick second before you write a 7,000 word comment about how wrong I am. Which might seem like an overstatement from me, but seriously, as I said, people are genuinely tearing down everything regarding this mod and any kind of praise it may get anywhere. While looking for info in some discords, I genuinely saw someone in a Lambda Generation discord that proudly proclaimed that they have done their part because they have sent a death threat to Fake Factory, arguing that they won't get banned for it because cinematic mod is universally hated here. Which, they were right, this person wasn't banned. Now, obviously don't go witch hunting for this person, it's probably a 13-year-old that got influenced heavily by the community, but it should perhaps cause you to think about how
I wouldn't exactly go so far as to call him a 13-year-old, but again, because these days can be really edgy for no reason, so I'll just, squint my eyes and look the other way for now.
far the hate for this mod has gone. Most people that you mention this mod to will immediately respond with fully modded and just write the game off as that one weird fetish game. Which it definitely can be if you want it to be one.
True.
But it very much doesn't have to be and very much isn't when you don't actively go out of your way to do so. Is it creepy to take to the private parts of Alex and just include that mod as a totally
Yes.
optional remaster without warning? Yes.
There's no need to ask that question, it's creepy regardless.
Is it weird to include sexual graffitis in a game for absolutely no reason? Yes. Is it weird to add a dildo in Alex's room? Yes, yes, and yes. The dude that made this mod probably should have gone to therapy instead of making this mod, to be fair.
I mean, yeah, he should have gone to therapy. But at the exact same time, on the one hand, saying that you made this game for yourself is just kind of stupid. Why exactly make the mod and release it then? Why not just keep it for yourself fully? It's kind of a lame defense. And on the other hand, it is technically speaking living up to the whole overhaul of the game thing. It did change its graphics, overall the combine and the settings and the map, everything was changed, so it does live up to its title. It's just the problem is that the weird stuff got slapped in, and it wasn't made either private or just full on a separate add-on, which again is one of the main problems with this.
It is, however, also impossible to deny that this can be quite a refreshing playthrough for anyone looking to have some fun next time they replay Half-Life 2.
I mean, yeah, if you tweak the settings the way Lucia has here, it does look beautiful. Like, look at that. That looks really cool. Like the sunlight just shining on the buildings, the decayed posters, the additional debris being added to it. It looks good. It looks good. It really does live up to the cinematic aspect of the
To
mod.
deny that this can be quite a refreshing playthrough for anyone looking to have some fun next time they replay Half-Life 2. Obviously, there is no universe where I would claim that cinematic mod is an improvement of Half-Life 2 itself. But to be fair, neither did the mod. It's supposed to be an over-the-top Hollywood action retelling of Half-Life 2. I just see it as an interesting alternative for a playthrough. Some design choices like the ferns that are everywhere, and the game changing the environments drastically, obviously don't make for a great way to tell Half-Life 2's story. This is what I mean though, it can still be interesting to look at. People for some reason just think this mod is more than it tries to be. They treat it like Valve themselves pushed it out as an update for Half-Life 2. But they didn't, and neither was it meant as a replacement of the original Half-Life 2, which are I think two critical points that people fail to understand. It's a mod meant to completely change Half-Life 2's looks, not be a faithful remaster. Now if you like how it looks it's a different story, but don't make it seem like you aren't able to just launch Half-Life 2 instead and are forced to play cinematic mod.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't recommend this for a first time playthrough, which I wouldn't recommend for any mod though. The effort that goes into editing and also recompiling every single Half-Life 2 map and that of its episodes is tremendous. And all this is just a one-man operation. The installation process is quite the pain. I don't know how torrents work, so perhaps those would make it easier, but I wouldn't recommend this to be the first mod you ever install. I think it's alright to criticize this mod and its maker where criticism is due, and some weird decisions definitely were made. Him getting basically cancelled out of the Half-Life community was, let's be fair, probably deserved. Not only
I mean, more like expected. If you're like do this shit and basically expect people to be understanding and agree with your opinion is just full on bullshit. Like again, I kind of get it, but it's so weird. It's so weird.
only for the unneeded sexualization of such a classic that is Half-Life in a mod that doesn't claim to be a not safe for work remaster, but also because he simply just seems to be a bit of a weird guy, to put it lightly. Also, in case you thought this mod
Very
was
lightly.
some horny teenager, the maker of this mod was 45 when he made this. Graffiti saying all girls are whores that are included in this mod kinda shine a light into what a person Fake Factory probably is. And obviously it's fine for games to include graphic text, and I'm not saying that art of any kind has to be a reflection of the person who made it. At the end of the day, I don't know. It just seems really weird because it's so unneededly inserted into the game. The mod itself though is way too overhated and shouldn't just be remembered as the fully modded mod. But that part should also most definitely not be forgotten. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you do get into any discussions in the comments, please be respectful. Also, obviously don't go witch hunting for Fake Factory. He may have made a weird mod, but he doesn't deserve to get personally attacked in any way because of it.
No one does.
Otherwise, thank you for watching.